Galin here with the Chatham Journal, and I have Coach Isenhour. And Coach Isenhour, Cameron Isenhour, is the Northwood High School track and field coach. We're going to talk about what's going on with his season. But, Coach, why don't you introduce yourself to the folks watching?
Hello, I'm Cameron Isenhour. This is my going on fourth year at Northwood. I started in the summer of 2019 here with cross country, and I'm the head men and women's coach for cross country, indoor track, outdoor track. I fell in love with track in middle school after my football coach approached me and said it'd be a good idea to get some speed under my belt. I ran for West Ryan High School and then Mars Hill and UNCG. I've coached middle school, youth, high school, and collegiately at the Division II and NAIA level. And I'm happy to be in Pittsburgh and excited to keep working with a great group of amazing young student athletes.
So you bring a lot of experience to the program. You and I, we intermittently talk, and there's a lot going on. So, folks, today Coach Isenhour had a meet yesterday. We're going to talk about the state competition coming up, and then we're also going to touch on some interesting things he's doing with another coach at the school. So, Coach Isenhour, tell us about how the meet went yesterday.
The meet went really well. We had school records in the men's high jump, 55, 500, and 1,000. And that was Jacob Acker, Marco Sanchez, and Christian Glick. And then on the women's side, we had school records in the 55, 300, and 1,000. And that was Haley Hirschman, Rokia Cisco, and Caroline Merle. And overall, it was a great day. I think we had 19 total PRs and 6 school records. So overall, it was a pretty good day. Competed against a lot of different variety of competition from 1A all the way to 4A schools at Eastern Alamance, which will be the site of our 2022 outdoor track conference championship meet. So they get to experience the surfaces there. Overall, I thought we did a pretty good job. We had a lot of PRs, and that's pretty good coming off January where we've missed practice due to snow. Also shortened practice with exam week. And then coming into a new semester, the kids really have had to do a lot of adjusting and practicing on their own. And overall, it's been a pretty successful season. And yesterday kind of just highlighted that as our last regular meet of the season.
I'm going to toss this out because the first time you threw PRs at me, I didn't know what the heck you're talking about. So tell folks what PRs are.
So a PR is a personal record for the athlete. So that means that's the fastest they've either ran or the farthest they've thrown or the highest they've jumped or the longest they've jumped. So it really means a lot to the athlete because in track you want to beat the stopwatch and beat the tape measure.
So how do you get them to the point where they're improving PRs? Well, what's the Isenhour method to getting student athletes at Northwood Track and Field to beat their own personal PRs?
My philosophy, and my student athletes will tell you, is to do the little things right, because if you do the little things right, you're going to be able to do the big things right. And then our 4 basic principles is always striving for excellence, be dedicated, hard work, and make the necessary sacrifices to do so. And I believe if we do those 4 things, then we can be successful.
You mentioned doing the little things right that gets the other stuff right. When you say little things, can you give us an example? Or are there specific little things, or are they different for each one of the athletes?
They could be different for each one of the athletes, but overall is I only see them for 2 hours a day. So what they do in the other 22 hours is just as important as what they do with me. So making sure they're staying hydrated, making sure they're getting enough sleep, eating properly, stretching, icing anything that's sore, taking care of their bodies, and mentally before races, visualizing how they're going to run it, going into a race with a race plan. Because that's one thing we want our athletes to do is to have a plan, because there's not a plan, there's no real direction for them to go.
Right. You just mentioned four things, so I want to dig into those things. You mentioned staying hydrated. When people hear the term hydrated, different things mean different. Hydrated means different things to different people. Some people, hey, I need to have 8 glasses of water. I need to carry around a gallon jug of water. When you're talking to your student athletes and you tell them, hey, I need you to stay hydrated. What's your hydration plan for your student athletes?
It all varies. Like your distance runners, for example, needs more hydration than, say, a thrower or a sprinter. But with hydration, I at least like them to have half their body weight in fluid ounces of water, and just sipping on it daily, not just drinking it all at once. And this also helps their muscles and also prevents cramps, strains, and other elements and injuries that can occur when you're not properly hydrated.
All right, so you mentioned has to be half of your body weight in fluid ounces. So let's take an athlete. You don't have to use a name, but give me a body weight.
So like 108. So I'd want
Okay.
them at 54 ounces.
All right. So that's a simple form, and I assume that's something not only your student athletes you try to have them follow, but it's actually a pretty good guideline for the general public, is it not, or is that am I misspeaking?
Yeah, it's a pretty good guideline. And then just like at your doctor's office, having charts of the color of your urine's something you also want to pay attention to. Um, you want it to be clear.
All right. So my goal every day is to have clear urine. Okay. I'm sorry. You mentioned sleep. What are you looking for sleep-wise from your athletes? Does that vary, or is there like a benchmark as to how much sleep you want them to experience every day?
Um, Studies show that 8 to 9 hours will greatly reduce the chance of injury, because sleep is going to allow the body to recover. It's going to allow the metabolic adaptations to occur. So with that, definitely try to get at least 8, hopefully 9. 6 or 7's kind of in that red area where they're getting an okay amount of sleep, but they definitely need more because of the amount of stress they're putting on their body during a workout.
Let's talk about the next one. You mentioned visualization. I had the opportunity to hear an Olympics see and hear an Olympic swimmer talking about how they've been successful. And one of the things they mentioned is that their coach had they do visualization exercises previous to every single one of the events. So when you talk about visualization with your student athletes, what's the process? How do you make them go through it? Kind of walk us through that.
In terms of visualization with my athletes, one thing we do is like a race plan worksheet. So it has their goals, their previous times, their times at that meet or course. And I do this a lot more with my distance runners than my sprinters and field event athletes, just because their races are going to require a lot more concentration because they're 2, 4, or 8 laps. And we can do it guided. So sometimes I'll use videos where somebody will talk them through a race, or they'll kind of close their eyes and kind of visualize themselves running and going through it and marking those checkpoints of, this is where I need to be at. This is how I'm going to feel, but I need to push through this pain to get where I want to be.
You mentioned visualization and race plans, and that was the next thing I was going to touch on. When you say race plans, is that is that something you write out, or is that something you talk through? And I assume you have a different race plan for each person, and even you may have two individuals in the same event, but each one of them is going to have a different race plan.
Correct. So that is something that we do with our race worksheet, because then I can get an idea of what the athlete is thinking and also what I'm thinking and kind of put it together. Um, and like for instance, with the two different plans, I have two senior 3,200-meter runners, Caroline and Emma. And Emma is one who is kind of a steady state, who I want to have even splits throughout the race. And Caroline's one where I want to have a positive first mile and a negative second mile. And what I mean by that is her second mile of the 2 mile race is faster than her first. And you just kind of have to know your athletes and find their strengths in practice to relate it to the race.
The times that I've been able to come out to some of your events, I notice you have what appears to be a very good relationship with your student athletes. I know that one time you had one event at Northwood. I got the chance to talk to Caroline, and she's like, you as a coach are part of her success. And she's one of the top athletes in the state, isn't she?
Correct. And with that, it's always good to try to develop those relationships early because they know that I'll go through a brick wall for them. And I know that on race day, they're going to give me 110%, leave everything they have on the track. And Caroline's one of those, definitely committed to NC State, defending national champions in women's cross country. She's state meet record holder, state champion in the 2 mile outdoors for 3A. She was third in cross country, and she's currently ranked first in the 2 mile and number 2 in the mile. And she'll be competing for those state titles against a very talented girl from Croatan on February the 12th at JDL Fast Track in Winston-Salem.
Now, is that the state competition? Because earlier on you mentioned a conference
Correct.
meet at Eastern Alamance. That was what took place yesterday. Is that correct?
That was just a regular season meet,
Okay.
but Eastern Alamance is going to be the host of our outdoor track conference championship meet.
Okay, and what day is that on?
That should be Tuesday, April the 26th.
Okay, Tuesday, April 26th. That's the conference championship. And you mentioned the state, and what date was that again?
Saturday, February the 12th for indoor.
Okay, February 12th. Shoot, man, that's coming up a couple weeks. And that's going to be in Winston-Salem, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. You mentioned earlier as to plans and the fact that some of the part of the planning is working through the pain. When you say pain, what do you mean by the term pain? Pain means different things to different people, depending on where they are in different stages of life, or what kind of activities they participate in, or what kind of work they do. When you're talking about track and field, again, what is pain, and is pain different for somebody who's doing short distance versus somebody who's doing long distance or doing some other kind of event?
Yeah, pain can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and also in track and field. For a thrower, it can be an arm being sore. For a sprinter, it could be your hamstrings. For a distance runner, it could be tired legs. And it's just trying to overcome the stress, the central nervous system, and overcoming the elements, especially during indoor track. They say it is indoor, but we train outdoor, and we also run some outdoor meets. So running in the rain, running in the cold, the snow, just pushing your body to its limits, because aerobically you're going to get tired. You only have a certain amount of lung capacity. Your legs are going to be tired, and your arms are going to be tired. And once everything's tired, eventually there's that point in the race, and you just have to use your heart to get you to the finish line.
Indoor and outdoor. When you're watching an event or you're at an event, I mean, you can clearly tell the difference between an indoor and outdoor event. But from a micro perspective, what are the differences on an indoor event and outdoor event? What are some of the factors that affect each one? What are some of the benefits of doing indoor versus outdoor versus indoor? Is the preparation different? You mentioned you do a lot of training outdoors, and you're running through everything, including snow. Can you tell us a little bit, again, the nuances of indoor track versus outdoor track?
Some of the nuances, definitely, indoor track's not as kind to the distance runner because it's a 200-meter track. So instead of going from 2, 4, and 8 lap races. You double, so you run 4, 8, and 16. And the air normally is drier because of just the building. It's usually a metal facility, and the ventilation's not the best. And with the indoor tracks, the oval is tighter, so turns are kind of a menace to distance runners because that's normally where they slow down. Outdoor track, it's more normal for them. The curves aren't as tight. They can breathe fresh air. They don't have to run as many laps, so they can let down their concentration a bit from indoor, because indoor, when you're running distance races, you really have to focus. For the sprinters, it's kind of fun because you're running 55 and 300 and 500 meters, so you're not normally running your outdoor distances. So it's interesting to see what you can run under your standard 100, 400, and over your 200 distance. And it's pretty exciting to see. And then for your field events, it's pretty much the same thing. You're still throwing shot indoors. You have the same technique, as well as your jumps.
You mentioned the air being drier in indoors. Sometimes the ventilation isn't the best. What kind of adjustments? And you talked about the actual running, about mentally, you have to pay more attention because there's more. You have to do more curves more often. From a physical perspective, is preparation for an indoor different than for an outdoor? Are you having to hydrate more, or do you hydrate less? What are some of the adjustments you like the conference that you've got coming up on February 12th, the conference meet there? Is that going to be outdoors or is that indoors?
That's indoor. That will be the indoor state meet.
Okay. How do you prep your and you've got athletes that do both the indoor and outdoor. So how do you prep your athletes for top performance indoor versus outdoor?
For indoor, the main goals, kind of just getting in shape and staying consistent, because you have a lot of breaks with Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then exams. And other teams deal with this. So a lot of indoors kind of just consistency, and then just focusing on the concentration and the focus during the races. We have our men's 4x8, 4x800 meter relay team competing. And we also have our men and women 2-miler, Caroline Merle and Colin Henry, who will be competing. So focus now is adding trying to get a little faster, especially in our foot speed and our closing speed, and just staying consistent with our training up until the 12th. And then with outdoors more of we need to be able to run fast in April and May when it matters.
You mentioned that a bunch of your folks on yesterday's meet had their PRs, their best personal records. How do you get to that point, and what do you like to see during this season? Do you like to see new PRs every time they come back for a new event, or do people slowly work up, or do you have a big high? Or tell us a little bit more about how people experience or get to their best PRs out there.
That can look different, and it can be ways that aren't normal for some people. Some are going to have a straight shot. They're going to get faster each meet. Some are going to start the season faster. They're going to hit a plateau, and then they're going to go back up. And then some are going to have your peaks and valleys. You're going to start out low, or you're going to hit a high point. You're going to have a bad race the next race, maybe another one, and then you're going to come back to it. As far as dropping time and getting better, I'm someone who wants gradual progression. We preach long-term athletic development. So while I want them to run fast as a freshman, I want them to run even faster as a senior and be able to go on and run, whether it be in college or just for fun.
You mentioned people having a bad race. What's your definition of a bad race? How come that sometimes occurs, and what kind of lessons do you try to teach your student athletes, and what kind of lessons do they get from a bad race?
A bad race could be if they didn't get out fast enough and get boxed in and have to expend more energy in the first half of the race than they wanted to. Or a bad race could be them setting a goal for themselves and not hitting it. How we go about that is we don't really harp on bad races. It's on to the next. So if you have a bad race in the mile and you run the 2 mile, well, that mile race is in the past. So now it's time to focus on the 2 mile. Um, but the big thing we try to do again is do the little things right and work hard in practice, and the racing will take care of itself.
You mentioned in that bad race, a bad start. So, are there certain bad races? And again, you say you don't dwell on them, but it sounds like you also try to learn from them. So, if you notice or the athlete notices that, hey, I did this little thing wrong, is that something you work on for the next race, or how does that process go as to learning? Again, you're putting it back, but you're still trying to learn from every one of your experiences.
That's something we talk. I'll talk to the athlete with after the race, and then going into practice, and then before our next meet, the day of the meet, when they're warming up, getting ready for the race, is I'll kind of reiterate, um, this is what we want to do. This is what we don't want to do. So we can try to avoid making the same mistake twice.
So as a coach, you're basically highlighting, hey, here's where we can do an improvement. It sounds like if the athlete buys in and follows your suggestions and you guys work together, that for the most part, and it sounds like it with all the PRs that you had, that they're able to improve through the season and then through their career. As you said, you got freshmen that start off at one point. By the time you're seniors, they're at a different point. So is that how the process worked for you and your player student athletes?
Yes, definitely. We've had people such as like Jackson Adams and Matthew Sullivan who were either new or injured their freshman year and not on varsity to um, running as my third and fourth guy with in cross country, which is varsity and scoring. So you can see that over the years, each athlete's gotten faster, and they've really stepped up to the plate because we have seniors graduating and some that leave big gaps that we have to fill. And our philosophy is the next man up.
So it sounds like everyone needs to be prepared. You mentioned that the way you got interested in it was your football coach pulled you aside and said, Cameron, I think you should run track and field. So Coach Keenan, Chris Keenan, is the new football coach at Northwood. He did a public meet and greet with the parents and student athletes who will be playing football. And one of the things he brought up is his game plan in preparation for the football season. He's a strong believer in students participating in multiple sports. And I checked out his wife, and their 7-year-old son plays multiple as well. So not only does he preach it, he actually lives. Family lives that belief that hey, multiples are the best athletes. But he mentioned that he wants his guys to be involved in track and field. It was interesting because some of the football players like, well, can I be in field and not necessarily the track side of things? I think there's also a couple that will be playing lacrosse. So can you tell us a little bit about how this came about? Did Coach Keenan come and talk to you? What was the process of him saying, Cameron, we want to get the football players involved in track and field in the off season?
Well, I went to our athletic director, Cameron Vernon, and asked before the football coach was announced is if he had any track experience because we are looking for qualified assistants. And he said no, but he is pursuing his student athletes to run track, which is something we really want and really need here. And I had an interaction with Coach Keenan on Twitter, and then I got to meet him in my staff meeting and spent a planning period with him, and we really got on the same page of in order to be good football player, you have to be a good athlete. And some of the best athletes of any sports are track and field athletes because they're developing speed, they're developing endurance, strength, flexibility, and coordination. And as you can see in Tyreek Hill, track speed and football speed are two different things. And if you can be fast on the track and not necessarily the track, but also the field, if you can get across the circle throwing shot and disc fast, if you can explode up and get over the high jump bar or get some air and be able to jump out far in that sand pit for long jump, then that's going to translate over to football. And your best football teams are the teams that are athletic. And that's one thing we're focusing on. And Coach Keenan's really on board, and it's really a pleasure to work with him.
Well, I've also reached out to Coach Keenan. He's agreed to do one of these live streams with me. I told him what we would probably do is I'll have him watch this because we'll talk with him with a whole bunch of stuff. I didn't have an opportunity to talk to him during the meet and greet because he spent a lot of time talking to the parents and the student athletes. He seems to have a good rapport with the kids. The parents, same thing, and he's not only is he doing track and field, I think he wants them to be participating in 7-7 competition, and also he's going to be more active about spring football. And it sounds like you, having been a football player who got involved with track and field, are in a good position to kind of understand where those guys are, because sometimes football players don't always want to do track and field and stay as fit as they need to in the offseason. So what are your hopes? You mentioned some of the general things, but what are your hopes for the student athletes who are playing football and joining your track and field during their off season?
My hope is that they find the benefit to it, not only learning a new sport and new skills, but transferable skills, which is something I teach in class, which these young student athletes need. They need skills that will be able to go from one sport to another sport or one job to another. And also, you can learn a lot about yourself by running cross country and track as well. It's an individual sport, but it's also a team sport. And if you get better, the team gets better. And one thing I plan to speak to them about is my freshman and sophomore year, our football team at West Rowan High School were the 3A state champs. And then our junior year, we fell in the state championship game. And I would say over 70% of the football players ran track. And I would say at least 90% were two-sport athletes. So you'll see you'll see a lot more success in the fall when they're getting off blocks fast, when they're hitting the holes fast, when they're running stride for stride with receiver down the field.
Well, let me ask you this question. When most student athletes come into track and field, do they have a predisposition to certain events, or is it something you evaluate and say, hey, you know what, you might be good in long distance, you might be better in short distances, or you may be better in this event versus that event? And the second question on that is, how are you going to incorporate the football players into the track and field regimen and figure out where they fit? Because I think some of them are kind of like, yeah, I want to do this, but I have no idea what I want to do.
So it's just like in the classroom for them, it's going to be a lot of learning. And as a coach on the first day, I'll always do like a biomotor test to test their 5 biomotor abilities, which I mentioned earlier. So we'll do like a 30-meter fly. We'll do a standing long jump, a standing triple jump. We'll have a shot for the men and women. We'll do an overhead throw and a underhand forward throw. And then we'll run an event. Just depends on what I'm feeling that day and what I think everybody can do. Just to get a time on them, they'll get 2 attempts at each one, and then I can kind of go back through my records and see how they stack up with other teams. Because obviously, to be a good sprinter, you need to you need to be able to jump. You need to be able to have some explosiveness and obviously run pretty fast in the 30 fly. And for my distance runners, if we run a pretty good mile, then I know that with more training, we can run 2 miles. And with more speed, we can run down and run 800. So it's going to be something fun having a bunch of new kids who've never done it, which I was one of those when I started. And it changed my life.
Well, it sounds like you're all set for a brand new adventure. We've come up to the end of the half hour, Coach Isenhour. I appreciate you doing this. Folks, we've had several folks watching this live, but what I've learned from the live stream is we have a set amount of folks that watch it live, and then a huger, is that a word? A larger number of people watch it afterwards. We'll be posting this on several Facebook pages, including the Northwood Booster Club page. We'll probably write up a quick little story on the chathamjournal.com site. As I mentioned, I will be getting in contact, or have talked already with football coach Chris Keenan. We'll maybe next week or the following week, we'll do a live stream with him. Coach Cameron, is there anything else you'd like to add or let folks in the general public know about what's going on with Northwood Track and Field?
Just that not only are we having success on the track and on the trail, but we're also making good grades. We're involved in a lot of clubs, and we do have home meets March 24th, which is our senior night, and April 14th. And we'd love to have a community out supporting our young men and women who are on the Northwood Track and Field teams.
All right, you mentioned senior night, March 24th, and you've got another one on April 14th. Going back to senior night, how many seniors you've got this year?
I'm not sure. It should be close to 20.
Okay, and some of those are going off to college and will also be competing. But as you mentioned earlier, you've got the next man up philosophy, so you're going to have some slots to fill for next year. Is that right?
Correct. We'll have slots to fill, but I'm not too concerned at this point.
Fantastic. Hey, folks, Coach Isenhour, thank you for being on here. Folks, appreciate you watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, do us a favor. Give us some positive vibes, some thumbs up. You can also follow us, so that way, if we have videos come up, you can know, like last night, I put up a bunch of Seaforth versus Jordan Matthews basketball game videos. 4 quarters of men's game, 2 quarters of women's game. So we're here. If there's any coaches in Chatham County who are watching this, whether you're middle school or high school, and would like to do this, just reach out to me. You can send me an email at genephoto@chathamjournal.com. And as you can see, Coach Isenhour has survived this, gave us a whole lot of information. And thank you for watching, folks. Coach, appreciate it. Stay on while I get us off the air here.
Thank you.